We're happy to be joined up in Cleveland by Mike Snyder, WTAM sports director for... Mike, how many years is it going with you at WTAM? Or should I not ask that question because I don't want to date you?
Yeah, I'm starting to think about it. But you have to think about it, man. I don't know. As sports director, it doesn't go as far back. But, oh, gosh, I actually, at the time, if you really want to go back, my first connection with 1100, doing work for them, I was kind of doing part-time freelance work. And I actually covered and did the post-game show right after the Browns and the Drive game.
Oh, my goodness.
The 86-87 season. Now, I was a really young guy.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, if you remember, the late, great Pete Franklin was the renowned host of 1100, the talk show host. And the reason I was actually on right after that game, Pete wanted to be at the stadium, and we didn't have we didn't have a studio there or anything. So they needed a buffer zone for Pete to get back to the studio and then do the show. So I did like the first hour after the misery of that game before Pete got back to the studio. So
talk about an indoctrination. Talked about an indoctrination. Holy smokes! What a post-game show to do.
So and then in between, I wasn't with them continuously since then, but it goes back. My connection goes all the way back to them. And really, this last time, I mean, I've been with them now for, gosh, I think going back to the early 90s now.
Wow. That goes back to fax machines and rotary dial phones on the wall.
Stan, we're way before fax machines.
That's exactly right. Well, Mike Snyder joining us, covering Browns training camp now as they get started. All right, tell me about this Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield venture of buying a RV. Is there an RV parked in the lot, or what is going on there?
Well, I think they've been pretty clear about it, really even going back to the off-season when they acquired Tyrod Taylor. And I think that they just don't want to force, and actually they said it at the time well before the draft, whoever that quarterback would be, they weren't going to force whoever that was into the fray right away. And what's happened is they went out and got Taylor. I think this was something John Dorsey had in mind, to get a veteran quarterback that they could send on the field. And I think he really feels there's some urgency to try to win some games early and then not throw a rookie into that as you build this team. And that's the plan that they're going with. And guys, they're sticking with it, at least I think, to start the season. And we'll see how it goes. And I don't know, someone asked me, well, geez, Mike, what if they have some success? And that's something I guess we really hadn't even thought about, after the last few years here. What do? Do you just keep Baker on the sideline? And that is going to be an interesting dynamic to see how this plays out, how long Tyrod keeps the job. Now, the other guy they brought on was Drew Stanton, who I think really will become maybe the number 2 guy if Mayfield rather than throw him in, let's say something happened very early in the season. Now, we'll see how it plays out here in training camp and into the preseason games. You got to believe with the number 1 overall pick, you want to get him on the field, but I think they really want to be careful before they throw him out there.
Mike, you think that's about being careful to protect Baker, or is it more about Hugh Jackson? And let's face it, if you start 0-6, can they keep him around?
No, you're right, Stan. It's over if it's 0-6. I think he would be gone. I really do. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in there. But I have a few wanting to go with the veteran. But I think it comes with the blessing of the new general manager, at least to begin this season with somebody that has been in the league. And I think there is kind of an urgency to get a few wins, not only to for Baker to maybe have some time, but also just for these other young guys. I just don't see how a lot of guys on that team last year really got anything out of that. When you don't win a single game, I just don't see how you get a lot out of it except knowing, well, hey, man, it's hard in the NFL. Well, we all know that. I think they know that coming in. Maybe not as hard as they thought it would be, but to just not win a game, I don't know how you get better. So I think that's why they feel with the veteran, they can put that guy out there, and I think that Tyrod's had some success. I think there is a ceiling, though, with him, and that's why they certainly did not change their mind in terms of drafting a quarterback number 1.
Visiting with Mike Snyder, WTAM Sports up in Cleveland, talking a little bit about Browns training camp. Obviously, the headline news that started at the beginning of the week was the Josh Gordon news, not going to be at camp. We've been paying attention and playing sound bites of the guys as they've arrived. They've said the right thing. How deflating was that? Or with Josh's history, Mike, is there almost a sense of, well, you kind of have to expect this with Josh. He's just unreliable. What is the mood up there regarding Josh Gordon?
Well, I think if you've been around here like I have, and I think for fans, and I think if you've been with the organization, what should surprise you? This is the way it has been. I think for much of the roster, and it's really been a transformation. I think for a lot of guys, I don't think it's as big a deal among many of the team members because they haven't been here. They've seen the guy work. We've really heard, what's been going on in the off-season workouts, and everything they have said has been positive. But I got to believe that still that when the word came down and whatever is going on, we don't know. There's speculation, and who knows what. Something happened, though.
Right.
July 26th was a date etched in stone. Training camp was going to begin. And 2 days before this, this guy comes out with this problem that he can't, he needs treatment or whatever. The league then says, well, we'll address this at a later time. So something definitely happened, no matter how they want to portray it or spin it, and it is a setback. How huge is it? I don't know. He played 5 games last year. By this point now, it's certainly disappointing, and I almost wish they would have cut ties before because they're trying to start with a clean slate. And here we are, day one of training camp. We're asking questions about, well, what are your thoughts about Josh Gordon not being here? And not a good thing, not a good start in that regard for the Browns.
It's a nice little storyline for Hard Knocks on HBO to follow that whole thing. How noticeable, and have you at all being around Browns camp, how noticeable are the Hard Knocks cameras?
Well, Matt, it was very noticeable to me. I was out there again yesterday, and they're everywhere. And they wear their T-shirts that say Hard Knocks, the Cruise. There's the big boom mics, or those furry mics you see like on the TV sitcom things. They got those in there in the structured press conferences. Baker Mayfield was signing autographs as he was off. I mean, there was someone there with a camera, and there was a microphone. So what I saw was very obvious. To the point where I was talking to a few reporters, I said, geez, I don't know if some of the things I said I'm going to turn up on that show.
That's right. I guess they worked out Pac-Man Jones today.
Well,
what do you think?
That's another one. Well, what are you doing? I think what we've seen with John Dorsey, is that he's willing to take some chances. You look at their 4th pick, Antonio Callaway.
Yep.
A lot of baggage there, a lot, and they're giving him a shot. So I think, and what it is football, and gosh, you're taking guys, and you hope you do your homework on. You take a shot here and there. I didn't really get Pac-Man though. He's 34 years old, and where he's been and what they need. I really don't. I know they're trying to rebuild the secondary, but I don't really know why they're going there. I know that they have Bashawn Breeland at camp today too, another defensive back that they have some interest in. So they obviously want to get a veteran in that secondary, but that did surprise me when I heard the other day that Pac-Man was coming in.
Last thing, Mike, and the moratorium apparently of not drafting Buckeyes for the Browns ended with the Denzel Ward selection. Also in the offseason, Carlos Hyde up there. Has that been anything like, because there's a ton of Buckeye fans up in Cleveland. Has there been anything like, have fans wondered, why are there no Buckeyes? Why don't they draft Ohio State players? Has that been a thing, or is that only a thing down here in Columbus that we have taken note of?
No, we've talked about it up here. We absolutely have. Some of the drafts they've had, my gosh, just take the best guys from Ohio State that are still on the board, and you'd have had a couple better drafts.
Yep.
That's really not an exaggeration. That really is not. If you look back at some of these drafts in recent years, so people were very happy, and Denzel is even a little closer than that. He grew up, here in Northeast Ohio, so I think people feel good about that. Even though actually there was a little controversy, they thought they were going to take the defensive end, Chubb.
Yep.
A lot of people wanted that, but I think that with Denzel, that's a good thing. Carlos Hyde coming back. I think they got a plan with the running backs. I like some of the things that they're trying to do. They've got Hyde, then they go out and get Chubb, the running back from Georgia, and they have Duke Johnson here already. I like some of the things that I see John Dorsey trying to do with the roster. So even though Baker Mayfield would not have been my choice, I'm going to give Dorsey some rope here. Let's see. He had a choice of all of them, and that's the guy he came up with. So I hope he's right. We need that here because even if Tyrod Taylor plays well, hey, this is about at some point getting Baker ready to play. And I do think no matter really what happens, at some point this season, I just don't think they wanted it to be under pressure early. But at some point this season, we are going to see Baker on the field.
So, Mike, me and Chris Spielman are pretty high on the Browns right now. We both think 8+ wins this season. Do you agree with us?
Stan, I wouldn't go there. Wow.
Thank you. I'm with you.
Oh, my goodness. I'm not ready to go there at all. I would just stand. Look, you got their schedule. Tell me where they are, please. Where's 8? Please tell me.
I actually think that there's a couple of that they'll get that nobody anticipates. You go back to Game 1 versus Pittsburgh last year, as close as it was. They had them on the ropes. There were 5 games last year I thought the Browns could have won if their quarterback didn't turn the football over. We know that's the one thing Tyrod does not do. And the way their defense played, you talked about the running game. I just think that this could be a year that nobody expects out of them.
Well, I really hope you're right. And I think that if they can win that first game, you mentioned the Pittsburgh game, and I think Pittsburgh is likely to come in here kind of a little fat and just a little overconfident. To me, that's a great opportunity there, that first game. If that happens, I could still see things being a lot better than what I see. And I see basically 5 wins or so. That's where I'm looking at. And I think, in my opinion, for this team. And I'd be right now, after where we've been, I feel good about that. But you do want to see how it looks later in the year. I think that game, there's a lot in that game because at New Orleans week 2, that's not a good place to go to try to get your first win. So that first game could, I think, tell a lot to us. And I really hope that they prepare a little more urgently than most NFL teams do, I think. They kind of look for the whole season. I would like to see them, it's like when the Buckeyes have a big early season game. I know that Urban's not sitting there worrying about, if it's a MAC school or something, the way he does get a team ready for maybe to play in Oklahoma or somebody big like that right out of the box. And I'd like to see the Browns approach this year and that first game a little more urgently. I hope they are doing that or will do that.
Mike, I'm up against a break. Yes or no, as we head to the break, you said 5 wins, and that's kind of a way I think. If they win 5 games, does Hugh Jackson keep his job?
I think he does. I do, and I think if it looks, and a lot of it is kind of how it looks too. I think that this thing, if they seem like they're in games and maybe getting better and winning a few games later in the year, where it's not just playing out the string. Get to November and you're just checking off the games till we get to the new year. If it looks like they're making some progress and developing some guys, I do think he would keep his job with 5 wins.
Mike, thanks so much, man. You're the best. Appreciate you taking a few minutes.
Anytime. Great to be with you guys.